This is David Prosper, host of Shepherd Revolution. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast from Public House Media.
Hello, my friend. It's Julianne Candia, the host of Rewritten. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you could screenshot this, upload this episode onto your Instagram and tag me at Julianne Candia. Let me know how this episode speaks to you. My hope with Rewritten is that I share my journey with you to inspire you, to empower you, to show you, to teach you, and all the things that no matter your current circumstances or your past, that you have this unlimited, incredible potential. And the things that we go through are the greatest lessons. I think that pain is a hard teacher, but it's a necessary one. So right now, my current circumstance is that I just suffered the loss of another miscarriage. So this is 2. And, you think if you've gone through one and they're 4 years apart almost to the exact day, that it would be easier. I like being the mentor with miscarriage once you're through it, right? It is so much easier to mentor people, be next to them, show up for them than it is to go through it yourself. But here I am walking through this grief again. And it's harder in some ways and it's easier in others. It's a roller coaster. There's things that I didn't expect, I didn't remember. It's been different. It's been the same. It's just been a whirlwind. And each time I've chosen to talk about it. And I think that suffering in silence creates so much isolation and heartbreak, and being able to talk to even one person about your story makes it better. I really do think that. So this episode is titled Miscarriage Sucks. It really does. I think that, my motto going into 2021 is enjoy the joy. Don't wait for the other shoe to drop. And I still feel that so deeply that even in the midst of a very tough season, I'm choosing to enjoy the joy when it happens, and I'm not running away from the sad. I think that miscarriage is confusing, and, there's times where I think I just became someone's worst fear. I have a lot of friends that are pregnant. I have a lot of friends that are trying, and I just feel like my sad story has become this reminder or this fear. And that doesn't necessarily make that true, but I think speaking out that fear is so important. I think that no one will mourn the way you would and will in your struggle, and that's okay. It's not for them to take on that same pain. That's Jesus. He did that for us. I just think it's also necessary to talk out and through these challenges that come up in your mind. So I recently read a book and I highly recommend it. I just feel like every word of this book put and articulated the words that I needed for how I was feeling and what I was going through. And it's called Grace Like Scarlet, Grieving with Hope After Miscarriage and Loss. It is so good. The author is Adrielle Booker, and I just felt so seen. She's had 3 miscarriages, and I think she actually wrote this book when she had 2, and then was continuing to write it when she had her 3rd. But just things like things that surprised you in your miscarriage, or some really hard things to hear in your miscarriage. I think one thing that spoke to me is how far along were you, almost to make it less hurtful, if you weren't that far along. And I felt like that was my first miscarriage. She just really talks about clinging to the hope of Jesus when you're feeling so shattered. It's so good. And she said, "You are not alone. Be honest about your pain and your grief with yourself, your loved ones, and God. Walking through grief together with trusted loved ones, a disarmingly powerful fellowship. a joy entangled in the pain. I pray you'll discover the fullness of that experience. We're never meant to grieve alone. Isn't that so good? So good. So that's just an example of her writing, which I just felt so seen in that. And she talks about, I felt the absence too. It hung over everything, especially after my initiation into grief when we lost Scarlett. The ache persisted, shape-shifting its form, but constantly present. My grief could not be contained within anything resembling tidy. Up and down and round, it was wild, untamable, and confusing. I wonder if you can see yourself in any of these journal entries. And then she talks about what she wrote down, and she even talks about, the power of journaling through your miscarriage. And so here are some of her entries. We're talking of the future, my love and I, recounting our short days with her and celebrating her and sharing her brief life with those we love and those we've never met. It all feels so bright, so hopeful, and I wonder if I should feel this measure of joy so soon. I think I have felt that way because as soon as my miscarriage happened, I had this overwhelming sense of peace and joy, and I felt so surrounded and so supported and so loved. And then the joy wasn't there a few days later, and then the joy was back, and then I felt at peace. And then in the last few days, it's just been really hard. Really hard. I just feel crazy. I feel like I should be over this by now. I think I've given myself a deadline to grief, and she really helped me put into words that grief is not linear. It's not check one box and then you move to the next. It hits you all at different times. She continued to say, "Can I grieve and give thanks in one breath? Can I cry and laugh, feel pain unspeakably, and joy unshamedly? Because I am. There are moments of quiet when I remember the unexpected emptiness of my belly, and I reach and rub and whisper, I miss you, while the tears come flooding again. And then I turn and see images of newborn treasures in the arms of dear friends, and I feel yes. Yes, it is good. Show me more. Let me see. I give thanks in my sadness, and it feels right. This ground is holy, and I dare not put my shoes on fear of marrying it. I want to stay here forever, and I want to run and never look back." And then she said, "I'm feeling the pull between wanting to slip into denial, pretending that nothing ever happened, and busying myself to help me forget, and wanting to listen to sad songs and watch sad movies and read sad stories and just cry and cry and cry and be sad, sad, sad. I'm tired of bleeding, cramping, hurting. Since my body no longer belongs to her, I want to take it back. Even my own flesh is caught in the murkiness of this grief. The pull is confusing. My world feels quiet today. It's harder to hear comfort. I can't sleep at night, or maybe I don't want to. I'm not sure. The darkness brings sadness, but also covers and comforts me. The hush soothes my soul." And then she goes on to say in a different entry, "I don't feel as angry today, but I know it comes in waves." Oh, that's so good. "Yesterday I had so many moments of calm followed by closely by rage. I look at my boys and I want to cover them with kisses. Do they know how much I love them? I need them to know. But then would come intense moments of anger. Stop fighting, stop whining, stop spilling, stop yelling, stop needing me, please just stop. I desperately want them to need me and want me and desire me to be closer to me, and yet I also want them far away so I can think and pray and hear the stillness." Isn't that so good? I just felt like her words were just articulating exactly how I was feeling. So I'm 2 weeks since my miscarriage, and I've chosen to share the journey. It is not easy. I think being an Enneagram 8, I can think I'm being too much or this is just too sad. And I had to keep leaning in and being honest with how I was feeling, and that I needed to learn how to show up for myself in this loss. And I think it's easy to try to minimize it and make yourself shameful or guilty or even denial of it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And I just think life is life. Life is beautiful. And if you've ever had a miscarriage, your body changes so rapidly and quickly. It's crazy. And mentally, you start preparing for the future and thinking about all the things. And then it's just ripped away. Pain is such a great teacher. It's a hard teacher. Life is 50-50. 50% hard, 50% awesome. This is my 50, and I'm here to live it. And it is hard. It is confusing. I'm really grateful at the same time for my faith, my community, and my lifestyle. I just can't imagine not having good habits during such a difficult time. So, miscarriage sucks. And I just want you to know I'm here, and I'm a voice, and I'm sharing my story with as much transparency as possible. One, for my own documentation to remember, and then two, for you. The person who has a voice, they just don't know how to share it yet. The person who feels so lonely and isolated, and maybe sharing my story makes you feel seen and heard, just like when I read this book. Friend, if this is something that you're navigating, or you're navigating grief and hard, and you are about to approach this year with so much relentless energy, it's not over. And this is just our time. And I think that this time is going to be a really great teacher, even it's not the teacher that we wanted. I can tell you, I wish this on no one. And I just wish that wasn't always the way that we learned things, but it is. I recently wrote, it's unfair for me to say this is unfair, because saying life's unfair, it just is. Life just is. And it's meant to be lived. And there's hurt and there's love. And we wouldn't know love if we didn't know hurt. I'm able to see that and feel that. So showing up with heartbreak and grief and the hard is hard. I just share exactly what's on my mind. I speak it out. I don't deny it. I don't hide it. I don't try to lessen it. It just is. I know that me doing that and processing that can only help me. We have two choices. I said this 4 years ago when I had a miscarriage before Faye. I'm going to be sad, or I'm going to be sad and I'm going to work on my self-care. One is going to help you more than the other. So I'm sad and joyful, continuing to work on myself and share my story. My biggest prayer for you is that you find an outlet in some way, a positive outlet, a healthy outlet, even with tears streaming down your face. Thanks for tuning into Rewritten. I am not an unstoppable machine, even though one of my favorite songs is Unstoppable. I'm not. I experience hurt, disappointment, frustration, confusion, all the things. But what I would say that is so present in my life is me continuing to work on myself and grow. And it is painful at times. It's thriving in other times. It's a whole mixture. But these are our greatest lessons. This is how I know love. This is how I know joy. And it's good, even when it's hard. If you could screenshot this, upload it, that would mean a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it so much.